Well, a lot of us are spending time on social media these days, and for some it has risen to the level of addiction. Here to explain what that means and how to unplug is Dr. Elias Aboujaoude from Stanford Health. He's also the author of Virtually You, The Dangerous Powers of the E-Personality. So, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
How do you know when, your social media use has reached the actual level of addiction?
People always ask me how much is too much, and I think this is the wrong way to approach this question. It's really more about negative consequences in other spheres of your life. School life, relationships, work. This is really how it goes from being just an innocent pastime to being potentially a pathology.
Okay, and you're talking about an E-personality, a sort of different profile that people are creating and what basically living through these social media platforms?
Absolutely. So much of the research in the last 15 years or so has focused on addiction, and it's important to look at it from an addiction angle, but it really fails to capture the overall effects of this phenomenon, because so much of the negative behavior that goes on has nothing to do with addiction. It's more about people behaving more aggressively online, more impulsively online, more narcissistically online, and these problems really aren't captured by the addiction model that so much of the literature and the research have focused on.
Yeah, it's sort of a new wild, wild west. We don't have a lot of research on this new sort of society that's being built.
It is a society, and it's a society that's affecting in very clear and negative ways offline society. When you look at effects on social cohesion, for example, on political structures, etc., it's all really linked pretty directly, I would say, to these personality traits and how they go released and disinhibited online.
Yeah, we've seen sort of some of the effects, at least in the 2016 election, of this vitriol and how it can affect the political system. But what about the general person's life? I mean, if you're portraying yourself a certain way on social media, how could that negatively impact your normal life?
Again, the impact really has to do with offline effects on relationships. When online relationships, for example, take over and become more important, when the number of likes you collect is more meaningful to you than whether the main people in your life actually like you and you like them back. And this is one example of a pretty direct effect on relationships. The same applies to professional relationships, of course, and academic work for those of us in university or at school. So really, again, focusing on offline consequences.
Okay, we're talking with your family, with your colleagues, for students, other students, the school structure.
Absolutely.
So how do we know when our behavior has reached the level of actually being a problem?
Again, focusing on these negative effects, offline effects, and really for us as educators and as researchers, really teaching people to recognize these negative effects as they're happening and to be open to novel ways of addressing them. One area that we've been looking at is using technology against itself. There's a lot of apps now, for example, that help you essentially turn your smartphone into a dumb phone, and that can be a good thing in terms of helping curtailing and controlling some of these negative effects that we're talking about. So programs and apps that essentially paralyze your phone after you reach a certain number of hours on social media per day, or paralyze your phone as you're driving and really shouldn't be texting as you're commuting to work. So it's okay to approach this technology-related problem in part by relying on new technologies that can help us regain this control that we have lost.
Yeah, in the same vein, I've heard some of these platforms basically warning you if you're using a certain amount of negative words or whatever. Do you really want to post this right now?
Exactly.
Like, let me save you from yourself.
Let me help save you from yourself. Absolutely. And when you look at the research that's been done that has used traditional models to treat this problem, whether it's counseling or medications, really the results are very mixed. So again, it's okay to be open to these these new means of addressing this problem, because we may need to rely on technology to help liberate us from these addictions and these negative personality consequences that we were talking about.
Okay, but the first thing is obviously to recognize that you have an issue.
Absolutely.
Paying
Awareness.
attention to your mood and how it affects you mentally. Say when you post something and you're waiting for the likes to roll in or whatnot.
Right. So awareness about issues like that, education at the level of our school system, also education to parents, and really insistence as a culture on more research being done to study these various issues. For something that has transformed life and society so radically, there really isn't nearly the level and the amount of rigorous research that we would like to see. And I think as a culture, we need to insist on that being done.
Yeah, I mean, it's just blown up so quickly. It's just amazing to think of how this has changed society.
It really has. And as a research community, we're constantly playing catch up, because by the time you think of a study you want to do, by the time you get funding for it, by the time you carry out the research and you publish it in a peer-reviewed journal, people have moved on to the new social media platform. The game that you were studying is something that people have given up on and moved to the next new thing. So this is really a fundamental problem in terms of researching some of these habits, but still research is an absolute priority and should be our absolute focus as a scientific community, but also at the level of culture at large.
All right, Doctor, really good advice. Thank you. Also want to remind that he's the author of Virtually You, The Dangerous Powers of the E-Personality. We appreciate your time.